Hey Lily, so those problems come from your worksheet for 10.4 practice A. Do you still have that to look back at? Okay. So when you're solving these, we have a quadrilateral that's inscribed inside of the circle, okay? And that uses one of our theorems from this chapter that says that in order for a quadrilateral to be inscribed in the circle, your opposite angles have to be supplementary. Do you remember what supplementary means? Yeah, they add to 180. So that means your angles that are diagonal from each other. So, like these two angles would have to add up to 180. And then these two angles would have to add up to 180. Okay. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, so for 25, you know that the two angles have to add up to 180, right? So what do we know about this one and this one, those two angles? Well, yeah, they do have to set equal to 180, but what do those little marks in those angles mean? Yeah, they're congruent. So if we know that when you add them together, they equal 180, but they both equal the same thing, how do we figure out what they are, what each individual angle is? Yep, that's exactly what it would be, Lily. Natalie, let me pull up 10.7, the equation of a circle. Okay. Lily, are you good on those? Are you okay if I close that? Okay. Hold on just a second. Let me do 10.7 and then we'll pull those up, okay? Okay, Natalie. So were you able to get anything from 10.7 or no because you were out? You were there that when we went over it, right? Just not when we graded it? Okay. So the equation of a circle, it gives us information that we can use to graph it. Okay. And did you write down what the equation of a circle was? You didn't write down the equation that was on the board, Natalie? Okay, so it's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Okay. The h and the k are your center of your circle. And then r equals your radius, of course. Okay. So remember when we're doing the quadratic formula, how we have to know, like if our b was 25, yeah, h is your x for your center and k is your y for your center. Yeah. The only tricky part about this is that it's a formula, and the formula is minus h and minus k. So if your h and k, like say your center is at 2, 2, then it's going to actually be x minus 2 squared plus y minus 2 squared, okay? Because the formula is minus. But if your center is at negative 4, then it would be x plus 4 and y plus 4, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so because you said I'm thinking it doesn't make super sense, right? Okay, let's see. Let me erase some of this. So if we look at, well, let's just look here at this side. This is not how you're supposed to do this section, but let's look at this, okay? So A says your center is at negative 1, 4, and your radius is 4. So that means, let's see if I can zoom in a little. This is your H, and this is your K. So when we just plug into that formula we have X, X minus H, so minus a minus 1 squared, plus Y minus K, which is K is just a positive 4, so Y minus 4, equals your radius squared, which would be 4 squared. You with me? Okay, so now X minus a minus 1 becomes X plus 1. And then that's just Y minus 4. And then 4 squared is 16. You don't want to leave it in this form. I want you to give it to me in that form. I want you to actually square the number and put the answer to that there. Okay. Yeah, that one's 3. Yes. So do those make sense? Okay, now let's look down here at like 7 through 12. These you're given the equation and now you have to pull out the center and the radius. So if you look at number 7, you see there's nothing being added to the x and the y there. So if we're not really adding anything, what number is that? Nope, 1 actually has value that would add something. 0, yeah. So that's going to mean for that one, your center is going to be at 0, 0. Okay. And then since it equals 25 here, that's your radius squared. Okay. So in order to find out what the radius is, yeah, it's 5. You have to take the square root of that. So your radius equals 5. Now, if you look at like number 10, you've got x plus 1 squared plus y minus 1 squared. So if we think back up here, the way that we got a plus 1 was that our point was actually -1. And then down here, the formula is minus k. So it's minus a positive 1. So our k would be a positive 1. And then again, r squared, which is 4. So the square root of that is 2 for your radius. Yeah, -1, 1. Is it making sense now? Okay. Your light bulb went off. Good. I like that. Even though it's late, I'm glad it went off. Lily, so you need help with 13 and 15 on that page of the review. Let me see what section that was from. Okay, so that's from 10.5. Natalie, it's not 9 for that one. Look at how the units are on the graph, okay? All right, Lily, so for number 13, we're supposed to find the measure of arc 1 and angle 2, okay? So if we look at our diagram here, a whole circle, what's it add up to? How many degrees go around the outside of a whole circle? 360. So this circle is broken up into 3 arcs, right? We've got this one here, this one here, and then this one here that we're solving for, right? Okay, so it's broken up into 3. Well, we know the measure of 2 of them, so can we use that to calculate the measure of the one that we don't know? So are you good on that? It'll be 360 minus 134 minus 170 equals arc 1. Okay, angle 1 there is 56. And then, yeah, you do have to find, or arc 1 is 56. You do have to find angle 2, which is this angle here. And the way that you do that, remember from that theorem, is this big arc, so the big purple arc, minus your small arc, which we just solved for, is 56, divided by 2, and that gives you your angle 2. Do you remember that, Lily? So then for 15, again, the whole circle is divided, or the whole circle is 360 degrees. We know 3 parts of it and just have to solve for this one part, okay, for arc 1. So you good on that part? Yeah, 55 degrees. Now to find angle 2 back here, we're going to do the same thing we did up there on 13. You're going to take the big arc that is intercepted by those, okay? So these sides here that make that angle, those 2 secants, they intercept this big arc, this 130, and this small arc, this 55. So you're going to take 130 minus 55 divided by 2, and that gives you your angle 2. So it should be 37.5. Got it? Okay. You good if I switch back over to 10.7 now? Okay. Number 16, Natalie? Okay. Okay, so what we're supposed to do here is to write the equation of the circle. So we just have a picture to look at. In order to write the equation, we need to know the center and the radius, right? Oops, sorry, my timer. You need to know the center and the radius. So if we look at the diagram, can you tell where the center of the circle is? It should be right here. So what would that point be? Yeah, you got to watch out for those and make sure that you're looking at how the points are broken out, because that will throw you off for sure. Okay, so for 17, you're just taking the center and the radius and you're writing an equation from that. So if it's x minus h, what's your h? Well, remember, if your center is hk, so what's your h there? Oh, 25. Okay, hold on. Let me change pages. Hey, how'd your competition go? Nice, good job. That's awesome. Where are your world championships at? Okay. So then let's look at 25. So for 25, you know your center is at 0, 0. Okay. So your h and k are just like normal. H, k. But this time, instead of telling you the radius, it just tells you a point that's on the circle, right? So if you kind of picture that, your center is at 0, 0 here. Let me change colors. Your center is at 0, 0 here. And if a point on the circle is at 7, 0, then you go over and plot that point. Okay, 7, 0 is going to go over 7, but not up any, right? So, yeah, well, 7 is the radius because it goes from the center out to the edge of the circle here. Okay. So for that one, it's easy. You can just kind of count over and see, oh, it's 7, and then plug in. But for 26, that one's not so easy. For 26, your center is at 0, 0, but this time your point on the circle is over 3 and up 4. So it's like somewhere up there. So do you remember how we can find the distance between those 2 points? I think you probably do. It's okay though. It's an easy one to do the distance formula for, because 2 of the numbers are 0. So it's x2 minus x1 plus y2 minus y1 sorry, both of those squared, and then the square root. So you'll have to do the distance formula for 26 and 28. 27, if you kind of picture it, you can count for that one as well. Yes, it is. No, for 27, if you picture you're at 2, 4 for your center, and then you're going to go up to 2, 7. So kind of sketch that. Yep. Yeah, I think, is that 10.6? Do you remember? It is. Okay. Okay, so for 22, we have two chords that intersect inside the circle. Okay, remember a chord starts and ends on the circle. It doesn't go all the way through. So when you have these two chords that are inside the circle like this, you just take the part of one chord times the other part of that chord, and then set that equal to this part of that chord times that part, okay? So you'll have x times 9 equals 3 times 6, which is 9x equals 18, and x equals 2. Now, are you good on 23 and 24, the ones with the, okay, 23 and 24. So those are the ones that you have to do the quadratic formula for. Let me erase this and make some room to work on here, okay? Let's see. Big. Okay, so for these, when you look at these, like 23 is a tangent and a secant, okay? Yeah, there's only one of these tomorrow. 23 is a tangent and a secant, and 24 is two secants. Do you see the difference between the two? Okay, so for 23, when there's a tangent, you're going to take the tangent squared and set that equal to the outside part of the secant times the whole secant, okay? So for 23, your tangent squared is 13. And that equals the outside part of the secant, which is 5x, times the whole thing. So remember, the whole length is 5x plus 9. Okay? You good on that so far? So then we have to take and distribute that in, okay? 13 squared we know is 169. And then the way we handled this is to distribute. So 5x times 5x is going to be 25x squared. And then 5x times 9 is going to be plus 45x. Okay? Still good with that? So when we look at this, we're like, okay, there's still an x squared in it. There's nothing to kind of cancel that x squared out, right? There's no other x squared on the other side that we can bring over that's going to wash it. So that means we're going to have to factor. And when you factor, remember that's pulling something into the two parentheses like this that you could FOIL back out to get into that form. So we're kind of undoing FOILing. So we've got to have it set equal to 0 to factor. So we're going to bring this 169 over, okay? So I'm going to say 0 equals 25x squared plus 45x minus 169. Now, what's your a in that formula? So the a is the number in front of the x squared. So it's just the 25. Okay. And then what's your b? Okay. And then what's your c? Yes, negative 169. Good job. So now we're going to plug that into our quadratic formula, okay, which is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so negative b is going to be negative 45 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 45 squared minus 4 times our a, which is 25, times c, which is negative 169, and then that's all over 2 times a, which again is 25. So now this is really just knowing how to plug it in on your calculator at this point, okay? Do you have a graphing calculator? You do, right? Okay. I would probably handle the square root part first, like everything that's under the square root. Okay. So to plug it in, I would do everything that's under the square root first and then do the other stuff to it. Okay. So when you, like, I would plug in square root 45 squared minus 4 times 25 times negative 169, and then close parentheses, hit enter. And then do negative 45 plus that, and then divide that by 50. Okay. Because I think where a lot of times you guys get off is when you try to put too much in your calculator at one time, your calculator doesn't process it in the same way that you think you're typing it in, because you don't use enough parentheses or something like that for your calculator to understand what to do first. Okay. So do you see how to do 24 then too? You think you'll be okay on that? 24, the only difference is that you do the outside times the whole thing equals the outside times the whole thing. So it's going to be x times x plus 3x equals 8 times 8 plus x plus 2. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's the outside part times the whole thing. So the outside part here is x. And then your whole thing, remember, is x plus 3x. And then for the other secant, you've got the outside part, which is 8, times the whole thing, which is 8 plus x plus 2. Okay? So then inside these parentheses, you can actually combine those because it's just two x's. So x plus 3x is going to be 4x. So you'll end up with x times 4x. And then on this side, your 8 plus x plus 2, that can combine too and just give you x plus 10. Do you see that? Okay. And then you just multiply like we did before. You just distribute in. So x times 4x is going to be 4x squared. And then over here, it's going to be 8 times x, which is 8x, and 8 times 10, which is 80. And then the rest of that is the same as what we did for 23. Okay, where you're going to bring, I would bring the 4x squared over to the right-hand side, so I only have one number that's negative. But I had some people move the 8x and the 80 over to the left so that both of those were negative and the 4x stayed positive. Either way, you're going to come up with the same answer. So it's okay to do whichever one. Hey, Larkin, did you have questions? Are you going to be there tomorrow or are you going to be at baseball?
No, I'm going to be at baseball.
Okay.
Well, I'll actually be there for 30 minutes, and then I'll have to
Okay.
leave.
You might be able to finish in 30 minutes, okay?
Okay.
If you want to come in and try.
Okay.
34 on that page, Lily, the graphing one. Okay, hang on. Okay, so do you see how to tell what your center is from that, Lily? Okay, so tell me what your center is. No, the center on that one's not 0, 0. So look, your center is HK, right? And the number with your X is your H, and the number with Y is your K. So remember the formula is X minus H, and then Y minus K. So since it says -1, then our H is just 1. And our K, because there's nothing there, is 0. And then what's your radius? Well, 4 is your radius squared. Okay, because remember the equation is r squared. So what's just r? Yeah, 4 is already squared. So you need, in order to find out, yeah, r would be 2. Okay. So then you're just going to go to 1, 0 and put a point. That's your center. And since your radius is 2, that means you can go out 2 points and put a dot, down 2 points, put a dot, go to the left 2 points and put a dot, and go up 2 and put a dot. And then it's not going to be very good because it's on the computer, but just connect everything. Okay, 27. Let me see if I can find what section that's from. Oh my goodness, I don't think I'm ever going to get there. Okay, that's back in 10.1. I checked everyone except for 10.1. Let me get it pulled up on the screen. Okay, so for 27, it tells you AB is tangent to the circle at point C, or sorry, at point B, and then wants you to find the radius of that circle. So we're solving for R. So when you look at this, it's a right triangle, right? So you remember with right triangles, when we're solving for one of the sides, we can use Pythagorean theorem. So, excuse me, our A, remember Pythagorean theorem is A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So our A squared, I'm going to write down here so I have room. Our A squared could be R squared for this side. And then our B squared could be 4 squared for that side. And then C, remember C is always the side that's opposite the 90-degree angle. So the length of that part is 2 plus R, okay? So it's not 2R, that's what gets everybody tripped up. It's 2 plus R. So that equals 2 plus R squared, okay? Because A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So when we work that out now, you're going to have R squared plus 16 over here, right? And then this part, this 2 plus R squared, we have to FOIL that. So do you remember how to FOIL? Remember, FOIL is your first side, and then your outsides, then your insides, and then your last, okay? So first, the first terms that we multiply together, 2 times 2 is going to give us 4. And then the next is outside, okay? So 2 times R is 2R. And then I for the inside is again 2 times R. So plus 2R. And then last is these 2 R's. So R times R is R squared. Okay. So now if we combine that over here, we have 4 plus 4R plus R squared equals R squared plus 16. Now here's what the difference is between these and the other ones that we had to do the quadratic formula on. On this one, you have an R squared on the left and it's a positive R squared. And then on the right-hand side, you have a positive R squared again. So we're going to have to move one from one side and put it on the other side. And either one, we're going to do the opposite of that adding. We'll subtract R squared. So subtracting R squared from both sides, they just kind of go away. Yeah, they cancel out. So that leaves you with 16 on the left and then 4 plus 4R on the right. So then you just move your 4 over, subtract 4, and then divide by that 4 that's with the r. Yeah, r equals 3. Good job. So for 12 on that page, 70 is a central angle there. You see that the vertex is on the center of the circle. And when you have a vertex for an angle that's on the center, remember the arc is just the same measure. It's when the vertex is on the side of the circle or outside of the circle that we have to start doing all the crazy things to it. Okay, so NQ is not 70. Look at the line that goes from M to O to Q. See how that goes all the way through the center of the circle and then to the other side? So we know that that is going to be a diameter. Yeah, so that whole, if you went from M and then left, go over to N, then to P, and then to Q, all of that together would be 180. So if we know from M to N is 70, and we know from P to Q is 30, then we can kind of calculate, or I guess we know, if we know that whole part of it is 180, we can just take 70 away from it to get NQ. Okay, so for 6, we're supposed to find arc AB. So we need to find, well, why is it not writing? Oh, now it caught up with me. All right, so we're supposed to find that part of it, okay? When we look at this, we know the circle adds up to 360, right? And when it tells us that this and this are congruent, okay, that those two chords are congruent, then we know that these two arcs are congruent as well, okay? So if we know the whole thing is 360, and we can take that 100 out of the equation because we know that that's up there. So that leaves us with 260, right? Now, these two arcs make up that 260. And we know that they're congruent with each other, so we can just divide those two by 2. Now, does that make sense? Yeah, 5 is 85. You're welcome. You have any more questions, or you think you feel okay now? Okay, good. Now just hold on to it till third period.